and if having your workers have holidays, if allowing a culture of long hours to grow within the industry, this suits them because it means they make more money. It's all about making money. None of it's about freedom and democracy and shit like that. But an inordinate amount of damage has been done in the last 20 years.
The question of what the World Bank does is a very broad one, but let's say that the World Bank promotes poverty reduction in its client countries. Now, we do that with a mix of financial assistance by lending money to those countries and knowledge assistance, where we provide assistance in terms of knowledge, best practice, global experience, in order that countries can undertake the necessary reforms. There is no area that I would say absolutely should not be privatized. It depends very much on the circumstances. There are gradations. I would say that water and electricity are maybe more amenable to privatization than health and education. But that doesn't mean that I would rule out privatization for health and education, nor will I always advocate privatization for water and electricity.
Good evening, I'm Ian McFadden, and you're watching Inside Money. Tonight we're looking at problems in Ruritania. Located far away on the other side of the globe, it's easy to think of Ruritania as an idyllic and beautiful place to live. But the lovely countryside stands in sharp contrast to the problems brewing in the country's capital. The government spends money wastefully, employing more people than it needs. It does provide some essential social benefits, but it also hands out subsidies to people who don't need them. Ruritania could simply go into arrears, that is, simply not pay its bills to foreigners. But none of these is a long-term solution. If Ruritania does nothing, its economic engine will grind to a halt. The good news is that Ruritania has consulted the IMF and developed an economic reform plan. At this point, maybe we should find out a little more about the IMF. Here's our economics correspondent, Iris Marie Fay. Iris?
Thanks, Ian. The various reform plans usually involve encouraging growth and opening the economy to outside trade, and taking away trade barriers that unduly protect local industry, stifling innovation and efficiency. And some inefficient state-owned industries may be privatized. It can be painful, but a country in this position really does have to tighten its belt.
Thanks, Iris Marie. The final result of all this effort and attention should be an improvement in the foundations of Ruritania's economy, and that will make life better for Ruritanians. This is Ruritania, well on its way to being a strong member of the global economy. Thanks for watching, and good night.
Good night.
The Washington consensus was a consensus between the U.S. Treasury, the IMF, the World Bank, three Washington institutions about what was the best strategy for economic development. It argued that the best way for countries to grow was to liberalize, reduce trade barriers, and to privatize. And over the years, the IMF, the World Bank, the U.S. Treasury, all pushed this doctrine of privatization on developing countries. The IMF and the World Bank gave a set of loans, particularly in the 80s, that were called structural adjustment. The theory behind it was that the economies needed some assistance as they went through the adjustment of the structure to liberalize and to privatize. But the problem with them was that there were very strong conditions imposed. Countries were told to get this money they often had to cut out education or health or other expenditures that were quite vital, enormous cost to many of the developing countries.
Select this one. One patient is under intubation with ongoing ambu bagging. Is placed under cardiac monitor, and really patient is really in critical condition. This is an example of how the situation of Filipino people displacing the government constitution, because this patient is really needs intensive care, should be placed in a certain ventilator because only relative to provide for 24 hours is ambu bagging. If this relative would fail to do the ambu bagging, the patient will die. So what is the deficit here? The resources, the ventilator and other devices. This institution could not provide because the patient need to pay. The patient would pay. They have to pay the ventilator. Privatization aggravates the access of poor people to health service, particularly health service. This is a very, very obvious example.
Good morning. I am Dr. Antonio Rivera. I am the medical director of one of the newest private medical hospitals in the Philippines, the Asian Hospital and Medical Center. We can do any type of cardiology services, with strong pediatrics services, but we can do all of this in what we consider a good total healing environment. And it begins with we have patients come in and have a hospital which has a nice ambiance, which you will see as they walk into the lobby. As we walk into the lobby, it is a friendly lobby.